Hello, my friend. Welcome to the English Talk community. I'm Ben, and today I'm really glad you're here with me. I know you want to speak better English, and I also know sometimes it feels like a long road. You listen to words, you hear native speakers talking so fast, and you ask yourself, will I ever understand? I understand that feeling very well. I remember when I was learning my second language, I had the same doubts. I asked myself if maybe I wasn't smart enough, or if I had started too late. But the truth is, learning a language is not about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to keep going, even when you make mistakes. That's what fluency really is. Not perfection, but connection. Not every word in the right place, but the courage to try. Imagine this. You are sitting in a cafe in Lisbon, with your coffee in front of you. There's a person from London at the next table, and they start talking to you. Your heart beats a little faster, and you can feel your mind searching for the right words. You speak, maybe you make a small mistake, but they smile and answer you. In that moment, the conversation is real. It's alive, that feeling. That's why we're here today. That's why this community exists. It's not just about grammar rules. It's about being able to live moments in English. I speak to you today with one main goal, to make you feel that you can do this. Every time you listen to this podcast, you're training your brain. You're teaching it to understand, to follow the rhythm of English, to get used to how the words sound together. At first, it feels like running uphill. You get tired fast. But then, step by step, it becomes easier. And one day, you realize you're not thinking about studying anymore. You're just living in the language. But before we go deeper, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment when you thought your English was okay, but later someone told you that you were saying something in a strange way? Maybe you didn't even know it was wrong. You see, that happens to all of us. And what we are going to talk about today are exactly those small, very common mistakes that most people don't even notice they're making. They are not big or dramatic, but they can make your English sound less natural or clear. Once you notice them, you can start to change them without any stress. Let me tell you about my friend Daniel from Madrid. When I met him, he was already speaking English quite well. He could have a conversation about work, about travel, about music. But there was this one small thing. He used the word very all the time. Very cold, very hot, very nice, very happy, very sad. It wasn't wrong, but it made his speech sound a little repetitive. The interesting part? He never noticed it. One day, in the middle of a conversation, I mentioned that there are many other ways to say those things, and his face changed. It was like I had just given him a new tool for his toolbox. From that day, he started playing more with his words, finding new, simple ways to express the same idea. His conversations started feeling fresher and more natural. I share this story with you because it's the perfect example of the kind of thing we're about to explore together. Very often, the mistakes that hold us back are not huge problems. They are invisible habits. And the good news is, invisible habits can be changed once you see them. That's the magic. Awareness. Now let's think for a moment about you. When you speak, can you remember any small habits you might have? Maybe you always translate in your head before talking. Maybe there's a phrase you always use, even when another would fit better. Or maybe you avoid certain words because you're not sure how they sound. I want you to keep those ideas in the back of your mind as we go through today's episode. Because every time you notice something you do without thinking, you open the door to a new possibility. Another thing I want to make clear, it's okay to make these mistakes. In fact, you will keep making them for a while, even after you learn the right version. Why? Because habits take time to change. Imagine if you've been taking the same bus to work for 5 years, and then one day someone tells you there's a faster way. You won't magically change your routine the next day. You've been getting on that same bus for so long that it feels natural. It's the same with speaking English. You've been saying certain phrases or words in a particular way. It feels natural now, and changing it means training your brain to take a new route. But the moment you start becoming aware, the change begins. So while we talk, I want you to relax. Don't push yourself to fix everything immediately. Just listen. Pay attention. Let the ideas sink in. Your brain will do the rest over time. One more thing. I want to invite you to be part of this community, not just as a listener but as someone who grows with us. If you enjoy these moments we share together, I'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast and give it a like. Why? Not just because it helps us grow, but because when you subscribe, you're telling yourself, I'm committed. It's a small action that says, yes, I'm showing up for my English. Every time you come back here, you're putting another brick in the wall of your fluency. Let's not forget, language learning is not just something you do with books and apps. It's something you live. You live it when you listen to songs, when you watch movies, when you try to order in a restaurant and the waiter speaks faster than you expected. It's a dance, and every dance needs practice. Think about Maria from Paris. She always listened to English on her way to work. At first, she didn't understand much. She told me she felt like the words were just flying past her and disappearing, but she kept listening every day. After a few months, she realized she was catching more and more words, more and more of the meaning. Now she tells me she even starts answering back to the radio in English in her head. She never sat down with a list of grammar rules for this. She simply opened her ears and stayed consistent. That's the kind of practice that changes everything. And that's why I want today's episode to be easy for you to follow, even without looking at any text. I want you to hear the words, imagine the stories, and picture yourself in them. I want you to feel that English is not just something outside of you, but something that you can live and breathe, step by step. So take a deep breath. Let go of the pressure. You are here, and you are exactly where you need to be. You know, one of the things I see over and over with English learners is how much they love the word very. And I understand why. It's simple, it's easy, and it feels safe. You can use it in so many situations, and people still understand you. Very big, very small, very happy, very tired. You don't have to think twice, so the habit forms quickly. But here's the thing. When you use the same word again and again, your English starts to sound a little flat. Not wrong, just the same. Like listening to a song where the beat never changes. It works, but it's not as interesting as it could be. Let me tell you about Sophia from Madrid. Sophia has been learning English for a few years, mostly from watching TV shows and talking to friends online. She's confident, and she loves to speak. One day, we were sitting in a park in Barcelona, talking about her recent trip to Paris. She told me, the city was very beautiful. The food was very good. The weather was very nice. The people were very friendly. And I smiled because I could hear how passionate she was about her trip. But all those very, very, very were like the same note playing again and again. I gently asked her to try saying it again without using very every time. At first, she didn't know what to do. She stopped, thought for a moment, and laughed. I said, what if you just said, the city was beautiful, the food was amazing, the weather was perfect, the people were friendly. She was surprised at how natural that sounded. And the best part is, it wasn't complicated. It simply gave her speech variety. Her description felt more alive, more colorful. Here's the important thing. I'm not saying you should never use very. Sometimes it's exactly the word you want, and that's okay. What I'm suggesting is that you notice when you use it too much, and give yourself permission to try something different. You don't need a big list of complicated words. You only need to remember that you have options. I want you to think about your own conversations in English. Imagine you're talking to a friend in a cafe in Lisbon. You just saw a movie you really liked. You could say, the movie was very good. That's fine. But maybe, if you're feeling adventurous, you try changing it. The movie was great. Or, the movie was really fun. Or even just, I loved it. You see? You don't need very for the meaning to be strong and clear. Another example. I know Anna, a student in Rome, who used to say, very tired, every single time she wanted to talk about being exhausted after work. Every time, I am very tired today. I asked her one afternoon how she felt, and she started the same way. But I said, wait, try saying it another way. She thought for a long second and said, I am really tired. I said, good. Now again, but even more. She laughed and said, I am so tired. See, the meaning is the same, but the sound changes. It feels more like natural conversation. This is not about being perfect. It's about giving your English more color. Think of it like cooking. If you use only salt in every dish, your food still tastes okay, but it never surprises anyone. Add a little pepper, maybe some lemon, maybe some herbs, and suddenly people notice the difference. Very is like salt. You can use it, but it shouldn't be the only seasoning in your conversation. Now, here's a small challenge for you. In the next week, whenever you use very in English, stop for just a moment and see if another word comes to mind. Maybe instead of very hot, you say really hot or super hot or just hot, with emphasis in your voice. If you can, pay attention to English speakers around you, in movies or in podcasts, and notice how often they avoid very and use a different way to describe something. When my friend Lucas from Berlin tried this, he told me something interesting. He said at first it felt strange, like he was forcing himself to think too much before speaking. But after a few days, something changed. Without even thinking, he started using different words automatically. It was like his brain had been waiting for permission to be more creative. That's what I want for you, too. I don't want you to memorize huge vocabulary lists. I just want you to give yourself small invitations, small openings to speak with more variety. This is not about speaking better English for some test. It's about making your conversations feel smoother and more alive. And it's something you can practice right now, even while you listen to me. In your head, take a sentence you say often. Maybe, I'm very busy today, and change it. I'm really busy today. Or, I'm so busy today. The meaning is there, the communication works, but it sounds fresher. I also want you to know this. Native speakers don't speak perfectly all the time either. They also repeat themselves. They also use very a lot, especially when they are tired or distracted. But part of sounding comfortable in English is knowing you have more than one tool in your bag. Sophia didn't stop using very forever. She just started using it less. Now, when she talks about her trips, I hear her mix things like amazing, wonderful, fantastic into her sentences, and her stories feel more alive. So for you, the first step is to notice. That's all. Don't push yourself to change every sentence you speak. Just notice when very appears, and if you want, try a small change. Over time, you won't even think about it. It will just happen naturally. That's how habits change. Not in one big jump, but in small, friendly steps. Remember, you're not here to be perfect. You're here to connect, to share, to be understood. Very is not your enemy, but you have the power to make your English richer, warmer, and more fun to listen to. And the more you practice listening to and testing small changes in your own words, the easier it becomes. I want to tell you about something that still makes me smile when I think about it. A few years ago, I was in London with my friend Luca from Rome. It was his first time in the UK, and he was so excited to meet new people, improve his English, and see the city. We were walking near the River Thames one evening, and a group of people started chatting with us outside a small cafe. They were friendly and curious, asking Luca how he liked the city so far. He wanted to say that he was tired and not doing much that evening, so he said, "I am boring." Everyone laughed, not in a cruel way, just in that surprised, "Did you really say that?" way. He looked a bit confused until someone explained the meaning of what he had actually said. Luca was trying to say that he felt bored in that moment, but instead, he told them that his personality was boring. The group understood it was just a language mix-up, and they laughed together about it. Still, I saw on Luca's face that sudden moment when you realize you've said something you didn't mean at all. And this is a perfect example of a very common mistake that I've heard from learners all over the world. It's an easy trap because in many languages, you can use the same kind of structure for both feelings and characteristics. In English, however, a small change in the word can change the meaning completely. One phrase tells people how you feel in the moment. The other describes what you are as a person. And sometimes, the difference is not obvious until you see it in action. After that evening, Luca told me he felt embarrassed, but I reminded him that these mistakes are just part of speaking another language. They're like little bumps in the road. You notice them, you slow down, then you keep going. And sometimes, they make the best memories. Weeks later, he even started making jokes about it. When we were waiting for a bus one rainy afternoon, he said, "Ben, I am boring." And we both laughed, remembering that night by the river. I've met other learners with the same experience. Sophia, from Madrid, once told me during a conversation, "My English teacher is very boring today," when she wanted to say that her teacher looked bored in class. We ended up talking about how the words we choose can change the story we're telling, even if the difference sounds small. It was not about rules or textbooks. It was about making people hear exactly what you mean. I understand how frustrating it can feel to say something and have people take it the wrong way. Your mind may start telling you that you're not good enough at English, or that maybe you shouldn't try speaking so much. But these moments are actually golden. They make you remember. You don't need to study a page in a book to learn this difference. You only need one funny mistake in real life, and you never forget it. I still remember when I was learning my second language, and I told someone something that came out completely the opposite of what I meant. They laughed, I laughed, and inside I was thinking, how did that happen? But later, I realized it became a story I told again and again, and it helped my language grow. Mistakes like this teach you something deeper than just the right word. They teach you how people hear your words, and how what you say carries an image or a feeling for the listener. Saying "I am bored" shows your temporary state, like a cloud passing through the sky. It's here now, but it will pass. Saying "I am boring" tells someone a story about your personality. It's like describing the sky as gray all the time. Those pictures are different, and that's why it matters. When you listen to English, make it a habit to notice these little changes. In movies, TV series, podcasts, you will hear people say, "I'm bored," in situations where they want to describe their mood. You will hear "boring" used to describe events, activities, or people. You don't need to remember a rule for this. Just absorb the sound and the context. Every time you hear it, your brain makes a small note, like adding a mark on a map, so you can find that path again later. Think of language as a city. Each new way of saying something is like a street you walk down for the first time. Maybe you get lost the first time. Maybe you end up somewhere funny and unexpected. But now you know where that street is, and you can return later, more confident. Next time you're in a conversation and you want to talk about how you feel in the moment, you take the bored street. When you want to describe something's nature, you take the boring street. Clara from Paris once told me she didn't really think about this difference until someone gave her an example in a story. Now, every time she feels bored, she smiles a little and remembers to keep it in the moment. She even plays with it, saying things like, "I was bored yesterday, but today I am excited." This small play with words makes her conversations more lively, and she doesn't hesitate when choosing which one to use. Here's something you can try. The next time you are waiting in line, walking to work, or sitting in a quiet moment, tell yourself 2 sentences in your head. One with bored and one with boring. For example, "I am bored at home." Then, The game is boring. Do this without pressure, as just a mental game. Soon, you'll start to feel the difference between them in your body, not just in your mind. Luca told me that after his funny mistake in London, he didn't just learn the difference. He started noticing similar moments in English, where a small change in a word could completely change meaning. It opened his eyes, and he started listening more carefully to conversations, not with the fear of making a mistake, but with the curiosity of discovering these hidden streets in the city of the language. And that's the real message I want you to take from this. Moments when you say the wrong thing are not mistakes to fear. They're secret doors to getting better. You walk through the door, you see the difference, and from then on, you carry that knowledge inside you. This is how your English grows naturally, without needing to memorize endless lists or study charts. When Luca came back to Rome, the first thing he told his friends about London wasn't the Tower Bridge or the food. It was the "I am boring" story. And guess what? They all remembered it. They laughed, and without realizing it, they also learned the difference for themselves. Stories do that. One small, real-life moment can stay with you forever, both as a memory and as a piece of the language you can use again and again. I remember the first time I noticed this mistake. I was talking with Clara from Paris in a little coffee shop on a rainy afternoon. She had been practicing English for years, and her vocabulary was impressive. She told me about her work, her travels, and even about her favorite books, all in English without hesitation. But there was one tiny thing she kept doing without realizing it. Whenever she talked about someone else, her colleague, her neighbor, her sister, she forgot something. She said, she liked coffee, or he work in an office. It didn't stop me from understanding her. I knew perfectly what she meant, but to a native ear, there was a little puzzle piece missing, a sound that should be there, but wasn't. Now, here's the funny thing. Clara didn't even notice at first. She was surprised when I pointed it out. She said, "Really? I do that?" And that's exactly why this mistake is so common. It's invisible to you while you're speaking because your brain is busy thinking about the main idea. You are focused on the action, the likes, the works, the goes, and not on the tiny ending sound that comes with he, she, and it. I told her about my own experience learning another language years ago. I would make a similar small error, and it would slip past me because I was so focused on getting my point across. When someone pointed it out the first time, I almost didn't believe them. It felt too small to matter. But later, when I started listening to native speakers, I began to hear that little sound in their sentences, almost like a rhythm in music. And once I heard it clearly, it became easier to match it in my own speech. Clara's case is one I've seen with students from Madrid, Rome, Berlin, and so many other places. It's not about the complexity of the language. It's about the way your mind works when you're communicating. You naturally focus on your message, not on details. But if we see language like music, that small S is one of the notes that tells the listener your sentence is complete. After that coffee shop conversation, Clara decided to make it a game for herself. Every time she talked about a third person, he, she, it, she tried to exaggerate that last sound just to practice. She'd say, she likes chocolate, with extra focus on likes. Sometimes she would even tap the table when she said it to help her remember the beat. We would laugh about it, but it worked. After a few weeks, she wasn't thinking about it anymore. It just started happening naturally. This is the beautiful thing about listening as part of learning. The more you hear something used correctly in real conversations, the more your brain starts to copy it without needing to study it. I told Clara to listen to English podcasts, movies, and casual conversations, but instead of trying to understand every word, just notice the rhythm, especially when people talk about he, she, or it. Those endings are like the repeated beat in a song. Once your ear catches it, it becomes hard to miss. I remember Marcus from Berlin had a similar moment. He said he'd go to work at 9. I understood him perfectly. No problem. But I smiled and said, "Listen to this. He goes to work at 9." Then I asked him to repeat it a few times in a row. The first time, it felt strange for him. The second time, it sounded more natural. By the fifth time, he smiled and said, "Okay, I hear it now." That moment, when you hear it, is the turning point. One way to practice noticing is to repeat what you hear in real life. For example, if you're watching a TV show and someone says, "She likes it," pause and repeat it in your own voice. She likes it. Don't focus on the meaning. Focus on matching the sound, the music of the sentence. Try saying it slowly first, then at normal speed. This helps you create a physical memory of the phrase, so your mouth knows how it feels to form it correctly. When Clara traveled to London a few months later, she told me she suddenly felt more confident when describing things. She could talk about her friend, her boss, or her cat without stumbling. "My friend loves tea. My boss travels often. My cat sleeps all day." She didn't think twice. The correct sound simply came out. It wasn't because she had memorized a rule. It was because she had lived with the sound until it became part of her natural speech. Here's the interesting part. Mistakes like this almost never stop communication. People understand you even if the "is" is missing. But little by little, these small adjustments build your fluency. They make you sound smoother, more confident, and they help listeners focus more on your story than on how you're saying it. For you, the key is awareness. You don't need to force yourself to correct everything right now. Just start listening for that small sound when other people speak. Try to feel it in your own sentences. You can turn it into a fun daily exercise. Choose one sentence in the morning like, "She works here," or "He likes music," and say it out loud a few times during the day. No pressure, no tests, just a light habit that makes the sound feel familiar. And this is something I always emphasize in the English Talk community. You learn best when you connect the sound, the meaning, and the feeling. When you experience the sentence, not when you analyze it. Clara's breakthrough didn't happen in a grammar lesson. It happened in a coffee shop, in a laugh, in a small tap of her finger on a table. That's when the habit started changing. Over time, she stopped thinking about it. She just spoke. And that's the real goal for you, too. To make these small adjustments feel as easy and automatic as saying your own name. Because when you don't have to think about it anymore, you can focus on what really matters, telling your story, sharing your ideas, and enjoying your conversations. I'll never forget the day I first heard someone say this. I was in Lisbon meeting with a small group of English learners from different countries. We were talking about music, and the conversation got lively. People were recommending songs, debating which bands were the best, laughing and interrupting each other with excitement. Then Elena from Lisbon leaned forward and said, "But this song is more better than all of them." She said it with so much confidence that no one would have guessed anything was wrong. Everyone nodded and continued. I didn't point it out at the moment, not because I didn't notice, but because I know from experience that moments like this are best addressed in a natural way later. The thing is, more better sounds like it makes sense. You're trying to say that something is not just good, it's beyond good. You want to make it stronger. And when you're learning a new language, your instinct is to combine the intensifiers you know to make your meaning extra clear. In Elena's head, better was clear, but more would make it even stronger. I understand completely why that happens. I think we all try it at some point without realizing we're doubling the same idea. A few days later, Elena and I were having coffee together. She was telling me about her favorite cafe in town, describing it in detail. The coffee was smooth, the smell when she entered the cafe was warm and welcoming, and the bread was fresh from the oven. Then she said, "It's more better than any other place." I smiled and said, "I know exactly what you mean. You really like it." She nodded quickly, so I asked her to try saying it without "more." She looked a bit hesitant, but then said, "It's better than any other place." We both paused for a second. "Yes," I said, "that's it. It already sounds strong, doesn't it?" And she agreed. That moment clicked something in her mind. She realized she didn't need to keep adding extra words to make herself understood. Sometimes, the simpler version actually feels stronger because it's clear and direct. That's something many learners discover when they start paying attention to the way native speakers express comparisons. I told her about my friend Thomas from Berlin, who once said, "This park is more better for meeting people." I remember walking with him in the park as he explained the reasons. It was central. There were good cafes nearby, and it was always lively. He wanted to make a powerful point, but more better made it sound heavier, like carrying an extra bag you don't need. When we simply switched it to better, his sentence felt lighter and cleaner. Mistakes like this are so common because we all want our meaning to be stronger than the basic version. You know, better is already an improvement over good, but adding more feels like giving it an extra push. The truth is, in the rhythm of English, better already carries that push. Saying more better is like putting two strong spices in the same dish. It's not terrible, but it doesn't blend smoothly. When I was learning my second language, I also had the habit of adding extra words to make things sound stronger. It felt like I was building stronger meaning, but really, I was building a longer road where a short one was better. Eventually, I started noticing how the people around me kept things simple and still sounded very direct. That's when I realized that impact in conversation doesn't always come from adding words. It often comes from clarity. Elena decided to pay attention to this in her English. For the next week, every time she wanted to compare something, she stopped herself for just a moment to ask, "Do I already have the strong form?" If the answer was yes, she kept it simple. After a few days of doing this, she told me she started hearing native speakers do the same in movies and series. They didn't add that extra more. This listening practice made the difference. If you ever catch yourself about to say, "more better," I recommend thinking about the scene you're in. Are you telling a friend in Madrid about a new restaurant? Are you describing your favorite book at a library in Paris? In both cases, think of the strongest, shortest way to give your opinion. If you already have better, you're ready. Let better carry the meaning for you. Your listener will hear it clearly. They'll know you mean that one thing is an improvement, without you needing to double it. One evening in Rome, I was eating with a group of friends. Someone brought up two famous gelato places. Everyone had opinions, of course. My friend Lucia, who was still working on her English, compared them and almost said, "more better." I could see it on her face. The more was about to escape, but she caught it mid-sentence and just said, "The other one is better." She looked at me and smiled. That little moment was a victory for her. It meant she was aware of her own habits now and could adjust without stopping the conversation. And that's a key part of communication in English. You don't need to stop and fix yourself in a stressful way. You simply notice these small choices, and over time, your speech becomes smoother. The world understands you either way, but these little refinements make your English feel more natural. I want to share a little mental habit you can try. When you're comparing two things, say your sentence in your head twice. Once with the extra word, once without it. Listen to which one feels cleaner, easier to say. Often you'll notice the simpler version just flows better. You don't need to memorize a rule. Your ear will learn the sound. For Elena, making this change didn't mean she started speaking slowly or overthinking every word. In fact, it was the opposite. She became more confident because she knew the structure she was using was solid and natural. She didn't have to try and make it stronger. It already was. And with that confidence, her conversations in English became more dynamic. I've found that when you start noticing these patterns, you stop treating mistakes as something to fear. They become something you play with. You laugh about them, like Elena laughed about her more better moment whenever she told the story to friends. And every time she told it, she was reinforcing the correct version. That's how the change sticks. Not because you try to be perfect, but because you repeat it naturally in moments that matter to you. This one always makes me think of Marcus from Berlin. Marcus is a friendly guy who loves traveling, meeting new people, and talking about football. He's confident in English, but when I first met him, he had one little habit that led to some funny moments. Whenever he wanted to ask to use something, he would say, "Can you borrow me?" I remember one particular day in London. We were walking through Hyde Park when Marcus realized his phone battery was almost dead. He turned to me and said, "Ben, can you borrow me your charger?" I knew exactly what he meant, but the sentence felt a little unusual. A couple walking by overheard and looked at us with a small smile, as if they were trying to figure out the request. The thing here is that borrow and lend in English are like two sides of the same activity. You borrow something from someone, and they lend it to you. But if you mix them up, the listener might pause for a second to understand. And when you're learning English, pauses like that can make you feel unsure of yourself. A few days later, Marcus and I were at a cafe in Lisbon. His pen ran out of ink while he was filling out a form. He turned to a person at the next table and said, "Excuse me, can you borrow me your pen?" The man looked confused for a moment, then smiled and handed over the pen. Marcus didn't notice anything unusual, but I did. After the man left, I asked Marcus if he remembered another way he could say that. He thought about it for a moment, then laughed and said, "Oh, right. Can you lend me your pen?" That was when he realized he'd been using borrow for both sides of that exchange. He admitted he'd never thought about it before. It just felt right in the moment, probably because, in his own language, one word works differently. And that's exactly how these mistakes happen. Your brain takes the logic it knows from your first language, puts it into English, and it almost works. People understand you most of the time, but it's one of those small things that can make your English sound more like that of a learner than a native. Later that same week, Marcus made a point to practice. We were walking in Rome, and he saw something in a shop window. He decided to use the moment for some fun. "Let's practice. If I want your sunglasses for a moment, I say, 'Can you lend me your sunglasses?'" I nodded. "And if I'm taking your sunglasses from you?" He hesitated. "I borrow your sunglasses." We laughed because it felt like a playground game, but that's exactly why it worked. Instead of feeling heavy, the correction became a little game in his head. I think that's the best way to deal with these moments in learning English. Don't pressure yourself. Turn it into something light. Imagine each word is a small tool, and you're learning exactly where it fits. Sophia from Madrid also had a borrow me habit. For her, it became clear when she was in Paris meeting a friend from London. She said, "Can you borrow me some coins for the metro?" And her friend, with a smile, handed her the coins but repeated gently, "Lend you." At first, it felt like a small correction, but later Sophia told me she appreciated it, because it made her aware without making her feel embarrassed. The truth is, even native English speakers sometimes use these in casual ways that stretch the original meaning. But for learners, having the clean, clear version gives you a small boost of confidence. That confidence goes a long way in conversations where you want to sound sure of what you mean. When Marcus finally got used to, "Can you lend me?" he actually started playing with it in his travel stories. He would tell people about how he first asked for my charger in the park, saying, "Borrow me," and how he eventually learned the change. And here's the interesting part. Every time he told that story, he remembered the right usage automatically without thinking. Stories do this. They work like glue for your memory. If you want to work on this yourself, try watching English language movies or series and pay attention to how people ask for things. You might hear, "Can I borrow your book?" Or, "Can you lend me a hand?" That last one is especially fun because it means "help me," not literally giving someone your hand. It shows you how lend gets used in everyday expressions beyond objects. Now imagine yourself in a cafe in Madrid. Your phone's dead, you spot a charger on the next table, and you want to speak naturally. The sentence, "Can you lend me your charger?" comes to your mind instantly. No hesitation, No small uncertainty. It just feels right. That's the comfort you start to build over time. And that comfort is what will make your communication smooth and natural. Marcus eventually told me he no longer even considered saying, "Borrow me." The habit had faded without effort. And that's the beauty of awareness. Once you notice something and see it in action enough times, your brain takes over and starts choosing the better option automatically. You're not correcting yourself anymore. You're just speaking. The key takeaway is that it's not about catching every single small mistake in your English while you're speaking. It's about noticing these patterns, laughing about them when they happen, and letting them slowly shift into the background until the more natural version takes over. That's how you grow without losing the joy of conversation. That's what keeps your confidence alive. I want to take a moment with you here, before we keep going, to talk about something that might be even more important than the mistakes themselves. And it's this: you will make mistakes. Again and again. Everyone does. I do. Native speakers do. Your favorite English teacher does. The difference is, some people let mistakes make them feel small, while others see them as a normal, even helpful, part of the process. I've seen so many learners get stuck because they thought mistakes meant they weren't ready yet. They tell me, "Ben, I'll start speaking more when my English is perfect." And you know what? That's a beautiful dream. But it's also impossible, because your English will never be perfect. No one's English is perfect. Language is alive and growing all the time, which means you'll always be learning. Waiting for perfection is like waiting for a train that isn't coming. Think of when you learned to ride a bike as a child. The very first time, you probably wobbled, shook, maybe fell over, maybe scraped your knee. Did that mean you couldn't ever ride? Of course not. It was just part of learning how to balance. And the more you practiced, the steadier you got. Language is exactly the same. Those wobbles, those little ouch moments when you say something the wrong way, they're proof you're trying, and you can't get steady without them. I remember when I was learning my second language, and I wanted to sound impressive. I would plan the perfect sentence in my head before speaking. By the time I opened my mouth, the conversation had already moved on. I'd missed my chance. And that's when I realized language is about being in the moment, not rehearsing for hours in your mind. If I waited until I knew every word, I would never speak at all. One of my favorite examples comes from Sofia in Madrid. She once told me she hated making mistakes, so she tried to think of every possible way to avoid them before talking. One day, she was in Paris at a bakery. She wanted to order something in English to practice, but she was afraid the worker might laugh or not understand. So she waited in silence and let her friend order for her. Later, she told me she felt terrible. Not because the worker didn't understand her, she never even spoke to find out, but because she let fear decide for her. After that, she promised herself that making a mistake in public would be better than staying silent. And she was right. The next week, she was in Lisbon. She saw a small shop selling handmade bags and decided to ask the shop owner about them in English. I was there, and yes, she stumbled over a couple of sentences. But the shop owner smiled, answered her, and her eyes lit up. That moment, she wasn't thinking about the mistakes. She was in the conversation, connecting with another person in a shared moment. And that's why we learn languages in the first place, to connect. I think one reason people get so nervous about mistakes is because school often teaches us that mistakes are failures. In language learning, that's completely wrong. A mistake is a step. You put one foot wrong, you adjust, and the next step is better. Sometimes you even fall, but each time you get back up, you've learned something your brain won't forget. Take Luca from Rome. Yes, the same Luca who once told new friends in London, "I am boring." When he told me about it later, he was laughing so hard he had tears in his eyes. That one mistake gave him a memorable story and a lesson he never forgot. Do you know what's missing from that story? Shame. He didn't feel ashamed anymore because he saw it as part of the process. If you can laugh at your mistakes, you take away their power to scare you. So here's the mindset I want you to have. When you make a mistake, see it as a gift. It's a sign that you are out there using the language, not hiding from it. It's physical proof that you're doing the work. Every correct sentence you speak now is built on a mountain of small, imperfect tries from the past. One of our community members, Maria from Paris, once said something I'll never forget. She told the group, "Each time I make a mistake, it's like leaving a footprint in the sand. When I come back to that same spot later, I know I've been here before, and it's easier to walk the path." I think that's just beautiful. And she's right. Every time you try, you make it easier for yourself in the future. Mistakes are part of the music of learning. When children are learning their first language, they make thousands of errors every month, and no one tells them to stop speaking until they get it perfect. We celebrate every attempt, every new try. Why shouldn't it be the same for you now? The truth is, the more you try, the more natural English will feel. You don't study fluency, you live it. One imperfect but honest sentence at a time. So the next time you slip up, I want you to remember this. Your mistake is not a wall blocking your progress. It's a doorway. Walk through it, take the small lesson it gives you, and keep walking. You are building something much bigger than a list of right sentences. You're building confidence. And that grows only when you put yourself in situations where mistakes can happen. That's the game. And the more you play, the better you get. I want to give you something simple you can do today. Not tomorrow, not when you have more time, but right now, even while you're still listening. Because learning English is not only about listening to me or reading something, it's about taking action in small, easy ways. We've talked about these common mistakes. Things like using very too much, saying, "I am boring," when you mean "I am bored." Forgetting the little s with he, she, it, saying more better, or asking, "Can you borrow me?" And maybe, right now, you're thinking, "That's a lot to remember." Here's the good news. You don't have to try to fix them all at once. In fact, trying to do that will just stress you out. Instead, I want you to focus on one. Just one. Choose the one that you think pops up most in your own English. Maybe it's very, because you say it in every other sentence. Maybe it's the "I am boring" situation you smiled at earlier because you've done it yourself. Or maybe it's more better because you've never paid attention to that before. Once you've chosen your one mistake, your challenge for this week is to catch yourself when you're about to make it. And when you notice it, pause for just half a second and try a different way. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do it every time. You just have to notice. Noticing is powerful. Think about it. When you're trying to change a habit, the first step is realizing when you're doing it. That's it. Because once you notice, you give yourself the option to choose a different path. Habits change not by force, but by awareness repeated again and again. Let me give you an example. Elena from Lisbon decided her focus would be more better. For the first couple of days, she completely forgot about it. She realized this was normal. Changing habits doesn't happen overnight. But on day 3, she was telling a friend about her favorite book, and in the middle of the sentence, she heard herself say, "more." She stopped, smiled, and corrected herself before finishing. That tiny moment was a victory. She even told me she felt proud for catching it, because it meant the idea was now living in her mind. Or take Marcus from Berlin. He picked "borrow me" as his focus mistake. At first, the change felt awkward. But after a week of consciously noticing moments when he asked for something and switching to "can you lend me," he started doing it automatically. He didn't sit down with a pen and paper to study it. He just practiced it in real life, in real moments. And his brain did the rest. That's what I want for you. These little victories add up. Think of them as coins you're putting in a jar. Each time you notice a habit and try a small change, you've added another coin. 1 or 2 coins might not feel like much, But after a while, the jar starts to fill. And one day, you'll realize you haven't made that mistake in weeks, and you didn't even notice when it stopped happening. Now, I also want you to add another layer to this challenge. Listen for your mistake in the world around you. If you chose very, listen to how often native speakers use it, and when they choose a different word. If you chose the boring bored mistake, notice which one people use when talking about themselves versus things around them. This part is important because your brain learns faster when you not only practice the change yourself, but also see and hear that change in action in other people's speech. Here's how Maria from Paris approached this. She decided to work on the small s in he, she, it sentences. She practiced saying a few example sentences at home in the morning. She likes tea. He works late. It rains often here. Then, during the day, whenever she was listening to a podcast or watching a show, she paid extra attention to that little sound at the end of the verb. After a few days, it started to jump out at her automatically when it was missing or when it was there. That made it 10 times easier for her to remember in her own speech. The most important thing is that you treat this challenge as something light and fun. Don't make it a test. Don't get upset when you miss a chance to correct yourself. This is not about pressure. It's about building awareness. And awareness grows best when it's practiced in an easy, consistent way. Think of it like planting a seed. You water it a little every day. At first, it looks like nothing's happening. But underground, the roots are growing. And then, one day, a small green leaf appears. That happens in language too. You might not feel progress this very second, but it's there, building, until one day you realize you've improved without forcing yourself to study it directly. So, your mission this week. Pick your one mistake. Notice it. Try changing it when you can. And keep your ears open for examples in the world around you. That's it. No long homework lists. No stress. Just light, simple practice in real situations. Thank you for being here with me today. I mean that. I know there are 1,000 other things you could be doing right now, but you chose to spend this time listening, focusing, and giving your brain a chance to grow in English. That choice matters. Every minute you put into listening, every story you picture in your mind, every little aha moment you've had today, it all adds up. You might not see the difference day to day, but I promise it's there, quietly building inside you. What I want you to take away from this episode is simple. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about making your message clear enough so the other person understands, and doing it without fear of small mistakes. Those small mistakes will happen, but so will small victories. Every time you have a conversation where your English flows just a little more easily than last time, that's a win. Every time you notice an old habit fading away, that's another brick in the wall of your fluency. You've heard stories today from people in Madrid, Paris, Berlin, Rome, and Lisbon. Different cities, different native languages, but all with the same goal: to speak English with more ease, to make it a natural part of who they are. And that's you too. You belong in that group. You're not some outsider looking in. You're already on the path, building the skills, step by step. I've said before in the English Talk community that learning English is not a school project. It's a life project. It's something you carry with you into your work, your travels, your friendships. It touches music you listen to, films you watch, even the little jokes you share over dinner. It opens doors you didn't even know were there. And the best part? There is no finish line. You don't have to wait until some magical day when you're suddenly fluent. You can already enjoy what you can do right now. If you think back to the first time you ever tried to say something in English, and then compare that version of you to the one listening right now, you've already grown. And you might even laugh at the older version of you, the same way Luca laughed about, "I am boring." That's progress you can feel. And it should make you excited for what's ahead. Because if you've improved this much already, just imagine where you'll be 6 months from now if you keep going. I want to invite you to carry today's ideas into your daily life. Keep your ears open when you listen to English, not for every single word, but for the small details, the natural choices people make. Imagine yourself in the places from today's stories, walking in Hyde Park in London, sitting at a cafe in Paris, exploring markets in Lisbon, tasting gelato in Rome, or sharing music recommendations in Madrid. Picture yourself speaking English in those moments. Your brain loves those images, and they make the sounds you hear and the patterns you use stick much faster. And of course, keep being part of this community. Every episode, every conversation we have here is another chance for you to train your ears, practice your focus, and build your confidence. You don't have to do it alone. We're all here with you, learning day by day, making mistakes, laughing about them, and moving forward together. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to follow or subscribe to the English Talk community, and give it a like wherever you're listening. Not just because it helps me create more content for you, but because it's a small way of telling yourself, yes, I'm all in. That commitment you make to yourself is the real engine that keeps you moving forward. So, as we wrap up today, remember, every word you hear, every phrase you try, every little correction you make, these are not random moments. They're the puzzle pieces of your fluency coming together. Keep collecting them. Keep speaking. Keep laughing. Keep showing up. You're not just learning English, you're becoming someone who uses it to experience the world in a bigger way. And I can't wait to be here with you for the next step.